our conversation with Hema Mandana, who showed us how trust and autonomy can empower teachers and learners alike, we now travel from Bangalore to Mumbai with Sidney Sutton, where Hema's story celebrated the power of community and inclusivity. Sidney's builds on that foundation, exploring what happens when those values meet strong digital infrastructure, deliberate innovation, and a clear sense of balance. Together, their insights reveal a shared belief that meaningful technology integration isn't about devices or platforms, but about people, purpose, and the culture that surrounds learning.
Hi Sydney, it's great to have you here on the EdTech podcast. Would you please be able to tell our international listenership a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Philippa. So I am Sidney Sutton. I am the digital learning lead at Oberoi International School, Mumbai, India. I've been teaching over at Oberoi for around 7 years now, but overall I've been in Mumbai for around 10 years now.
That's incredible. 10 years. You must have seen an awful lot of change out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I first came over 2014, right after I graduated, and yeah, the change that we've seen in the past 5 years alone, 10 years alone, has been incredible. From the country first having different political parties shifting, and then just seeing that growth over the past 10 years and those sorts of things. Yeah, it's incredible, and it's incredible to be here.
That's awesome. I always think of India as somewhere that there's such a respect and high level of understanding around the importance of education. Is that something that you feel within your school, within the region?
Yes, definitely. There's a huge amount of respect for teachers, and we have these teacher days is really highly regarded over here. Having like a guru is something that is celebrated every year, and that's really nice. It's really nice that respect and reverence for education is still very much there, even in international schools or across the country. And yeah, it's so much so that when I first came over, I was, in my 20s, quite young. People were very surprised. Parents were very surprised. How can you be a teacher at this age?
When you look back across, especially the last decade within India, what are the things that, as an educator, have really ignited your passion for education? Yeah,
so I mean, it's an incredible melting pot of a country, especially the city as well, Mumbai. There's 20 million people in Mumbai, probably more than 22 million people in the size
incredible.
Of in quite a small space as well. So that's always exciting. Everyone sort of kind of knows everyone, every school, all the educators. So we have a very close-knit community of educators over here over those 10 years, which is great. I think we've all gone through similar sort of challenges as the schools have been developing, as we've been over the past 10 years or so. So that's been really exciting. The community is a huge part of it here in Mumbai and across India. I think, because there's so much growth happening, like it feels like you are at the center of change, so that things are happening. So, I mean, I grew up in the UK, the southwest of the country, so I'm quite used to that country sort of slow, like farm life. Yeah. So to come straight into like one of the busiest cities in the world, you can definitely sense that there's exciting things happening here, and that's why I think I've sort of fell in love with the place and stayed so long, because you want to sort of get caught up in the action.
Yeah, amazing. And that collaboration is always something that I feel links so well back to EdTech. I know that for myself on my own EdTech journey, it was collaboration that was the thing that really helped me to understand and to learn and to make progress within my own school that I was in. Is that similar for you?
Yeah, so I think, it's really interesting sort of having those support structures and having those networks. And I think more recently, and I know there's been a lot of changes in EdTech, but there's been sort of these waves of hypes and things that we were like, okay, this is going to be really exciting, and then okay, it drops off. So we've got this community of people who are either very critical and thinking about it and taking their time with it, and then we've got the first early adopters of people who are jumping. So it's really exciting to sort of, you know, have those conversations and be like, okay, is this the new shiny thing in education now? And then having ability to sort of unpack that with a community and network of other EdTech specialists, experts, really keeps us grounded and helps us, you know, shape school policy in a very much more purposeful way, rather than sort of jumping on the next thing, which is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so easy, isn't it, to jump on these shiny objects in EdTech, but actually I think, you know, as we move on in our journey as EdTech leaders, we realise that, as you mentioned, policy and procedure and actually getting people to really buy into it so it integrates really well into your classroom. So I guess from that, tell us a little bit about your school and your classroom. I was incredibly lucky to meet some of your students who were phenomenal and so knowledgeable. Do tell us about that.
Yeah, so we're really lucky. We have Apple. We're in the Apple Distinguished School in our area in the city. So all our students have access to Apple iPads, Apple MacBooks. So technology for them is something that isn't a barrier necessarily, like it's frictionless almost. I mean, not entirely frictionless, but there's no in terms of, you know, the digital divide and the gap. It's the mobility of this particular school means that everyone has access to the latest and greatest in technology, no matter where they are in their school journey. So that almost means that you can plan to do so much more without thinking, okay, can everyone access this? Can we all get on? You know, it's like, right, we're going to do this really exciting engagement, you know, and you can build on that. And as it's consistent across the school, it's really exciting to sort of plan for integration really, really, really well. And you can sort of take that to a whole new level, and technology doesn't become a barrier. You know, if we're doing something in our grade 3 classroom, we can pull out, you know, an app that the kids can start brainstorming straight away, with no sort of login issues or internet issues or device command. It's just like, okay, we want to plan something. Let's start jotting down ideas. And then as you get at the further end of the school, you know, there's lots of exciting things they can do with, you know, creative apps up there as well. And, you know, it means that we can, you know, as educators, that's not a consideration we need to necessarily think about before we start trying to do exciting things in the classroom. Yeah,
which is amazing, because actually in many schools, even those that do have or have this equity barrier removed and they do have the luxury of all this technology, the setup isn't always there in terms of the infrastructure to allow that to happen. So I guess in terms of your kind of vision for technology, is it simplified, or is it how do you deal with kind of the requests for innovation and sparkly new things versus the concrete things that allow us to get the pedagogy done?
I think having really strong foundations helps a lot. Having our infrastructure in place and the support for that is incredible, and I think that needs to get done right. And the sooner you get that right, then the sooner you can start bringing in and innovating. So I know, again, been there for some time, we you know, if the internet's an issue, then we can't do the things that we wanted to do. And if the devices aren't, you know, are compatible, or there's some issue, then you can't do those things. So before you do any sort of innovation, before you start, okay, we want to try something, we want to revolute, you know, all those things that we say we want to try and do. I think the first foundational step is just making sure your infrastructure can support that, making sure that the devices you're looking into can support that. All those, you know, technical things that might come across, you know, sort of stop learning is those things. If you get them right, then you can fly. The next thing that comes along, you can just start going straight away, pick up and go. And I think getting that right has been, you know, the biggest chunk of what we've been trying to do over the past, you know, 2 or 3 years. And I think, you know, now while we're in a position we can just go, you know, that's when the magic happens.
And so if we look forwards, I guess, to 10, 20 more years, where do you see education trends going within your region specifically? Like what are the big things that are happening at the moment that people are starting to really consider within education?
Yeah, I know. I've been trying to avoid saying AI, but AI is, I mean, everywhere. So that's where the exciting thing is. I think for the country, for the region as well. India's trying to develop its own large language models and things like that, like a government initiatives and things like that. So I think we can start seeing a lot more development in that area over here. We've got amazing graduates and students who go to, top universities, and computer science is such a big part of, graduates coming out of India the past few years. So I don't think there's going to be any lack of innovation in terms of developing that. But a lot of these graduates are now moving into large language models, machine learning, AI as a sort of skill that they want to develop. So I think we'll see more development, more native development. So I know a lot of countries all are trying to develop their own AI tools in country. So I think we'll see more of that, and we'll see how that goes. But I think more what we'll see, particularly in this part of the world, is more homegrown innovation, more homegrown EdTech companies or solutions, or it would be much more over here. So it's a big time for growth, big time for those sorts of things. So that's just from sort of, again, I'm thinking from a EdTech leader perspective rather than a classroom teacher perspective. But yeah, you'll definitely see. I think that's where we're sort of heading.
And in terms of the classroom, I was really interested to find that some of the new curriculum frameworks are actually aligning towards more augmented reality as well within the classroom, and trying to have those experiential, immersive kind of elements within lessons. Is that something that you see as being able to be embraced? I guess not just necessarily within Oberoi, where we know it's maybe quite equitable, but across the board, it does strike me that there will be an imbalance of technology across the region. So do you see that as being something that will take time, or is it quite an aspirational goal?
Yeah, I think it would take time, as with anywhere. I think the access to the hardware, I guess. As we get more powerful chips and smaller devices, we will start seeing more development in these areas. For me, augmented reality, virtual reality has always been something we've tried to incorporate, and it's always been exciting for the students for, say, like a one-off lesson or like a provocation or a hook or something like that. But it's never sustained in terms of continuing through a way as a means to learn, like independent research and things like that. So it tends to be something that still needs a lot of development, perhaps, in terms of open source resources people can access. So there's still a lot of connection that needs up in there. So it depends. It doesn't necessarily matter about the hardware you're buying now. It's also about the online resources you have access to. I think that would be a big part of equity. Even if you can entry model, depending on where you get in, I think that's going to be something. And yeah, I mean, if you are coming from a different background, it won't be the first thing you're going to be buying on a large scale, because, if the value is there or not, then that's yet to be seen. And I think as we, keep developing, maybe it will come out more. I know, virtual reality, for example, is really exciting, but it also leads to quite isolationism. You tend to only be the person with the goggles on, or whoever can see is part of that experience, whereas augmented reality feels a bit more, we can all join in on a project. And I know XR, mixed reality, might unlock some areas where people can collaborate, but if that collaboration's not there, then I think we won't catch on as fast.
No, yeah, and again, I guess it goes back to equity. So even in the most invested in classrooms, that still becomes a barrier. And I totally agree in terms of the resources. I think it's that for me was always one of the biggest barriers, was around actually what are my students able to do, and I think that connection between EdTech and educators is really key for that, isn't it? Is that development of some really incredible resourcing for students to be able to access. But that's amazing. So I guess just to kind of consider your future trajectory, what do you hope for the school? What are you hoping to be able to achieve within the next 12 to 18 months? What are some of those really key things that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting question. So, I mean, we are moving ahead with our AI policies, developing those. We're making sure that we are looking at ethical AI ethics now, and we really want to develop students to start being critical thinkers about the content and what they're using this technology for. So it sort of comes back to that basics of, digital citizenship, and making sure that whatever new technology comes out, is like, how are we engaging with it? How are we engaging it ethically, responsibly? So that's the big thing from sort of our perspective, is just that, yes, we're excited for these changes and we really want you to sort of engage with it, but there's a limit on how much it's going to happen. So let's be critical thinkers now, before it gets to a stage where it might be everywhere, it might be very ubiquitous, but let's make sure those human skills are still there. So we are, as much as we are going for innovation, it's coming back to those organic, those human skills, the understanding of this is just a tool, perhaps, and I think with the development of like you're talking about AR and VR, like we will obviously pursue and we'll prepare students for a future where these technologies might exist, but it'll also be from a standpoint of what's your contribution? What are you adding? Don't let have a friction in your learning. Don't just let something think for you or do things for you. Like, understand how it's working. Have that computational thinking to understand things like tokens and that. So for us, it's about just making sure that we don't get too lost in the innovation, and we're coming back to those skills, a part of our curriculum, and I think that's going to be something we're really pushing for now, and sort of not holding back the technology, but taking it one step at a time, and making sure we're doing it deliberately.
Nice, lovely. I love that, deliberately, because I think it's all about that kind of conversation between ed and tech, really, isn't it? And it is really about us making sure that what we're doing for our students is about building those skills for the future. And as we know from, I'm sure you'll have done the plethora of reading that there is at the moment with all the new policies that are coming out from all over the world, that humanistic side is just vital for us to be able to reassure, I think, as well, to some extent, students and parents and other teachers that yes, there is so much innovation, there's so much happening, but what the most important part of this is that actually allows us to be very human, and to have those humanistic skills, which is just a really nice thing to be able to consider, really, and it gives us balance, which I think brings me to one of my last questions. Many people listening might go, oh, you've got all this tech, that must mean that you're using it all the time. Tell us around, I guess, the balance of technology in your school.
Yeah, no, it's something we get quite a lot as well. It's great that we do have access to this technology, but there is a real, purposeful balance that we try to maintain. So, if the teacher doesn't need to use the technology, they won't, or they don't need to. There's no compulsion to use it. We look at the SAMR model. If it's a substitution, then what's the best way? So one of our sort of guiding statements in our policy, which overrides sort of what shall I do in this scenario? What shall I do in this scenario? Is it for learning purposes? Is the activity for learning purposes? And if you find it's not for learning, then you don't need to use technology for that instance. So is it going to make a difference if I use technology here or not? Is it going to help me, differentiate my classroom? Is it going to help me support learners? Is it going to really transform the learning of this activity? And if the answer to those questions is sort of no, not really, then then teachers are empowered to go, okay, iPads away. We're not using iPads today, and it all starts with that. The teacher is still the teacher. Those classroom agreements, essential agreements, are still essential. When students come into the classroom, it's like, let's not all just get on our devices straight away. Let's keep them away until the activity or until the need of the classroom is there. And there'll be some days where the students won't even use a device. They could go the whole day when they're not using a device, perhaps, with for whatever reason the classroom dictates it that day. I think having that sort of approach means that when the iPad comes out or when the MacBooks come out, then it's going to be purposeful. It's okay, we're all going to do this activity together, or we're going to finish off this, and then it's a purposeful activity. And we're great that we have some device measures installed, so if the teacher does need to freeze the devices or close them down and get back to learning, then that's within the teacher on their device. So I think that gives that helps that with that balance, to just empower the classroom to be like, this is for learning first, and then we'll come back to the technology if we need to use it.
That's really nice. I love the way that's reinforced in a range of different ways throughout, whether it is the pedagogical approach or whether it's just in terms of the policy. That support and reminding staff that they have the choice and bringing it back to purpose is just exactly what we need. So I guess just to leave the audience, what would you say is your biggest tip for anyone who is either moving into an EdTech role or maybe is in an EdTech role but is a little bit like I used to feel, where sometimes we were floundering a little bit and you kind of just need someone to say, you know what, here's a top tip. What would your sort of top tip be to teachers?
Oh my goodness, it's there's so many lessons along the way we've sort of picked up, and it depends where you're going in, really. I mean, if you're coming in as a teacher, I would go back to that pedagogical first instinct. It's learning is what's important in the classroom. Focus on the learning before the technology, no matter how much the integration is. That's really important. Building strong relationships with your teachers and your IT department is really, really key. If you don't have that, then those components won't talk to each other. You need to have that ability to communicate between those two, and of course infrastructure as well. If the infrastructure isn't doing it, and that's when those relationships come in, because you could be on your first day into a new school and you'd be like, oh, we want to do this thing, but we can't do it because that's not. So you need to know where you are in terms of infrastructure, where you are with relationships with teachers and the IT department, and where you are with curriculum and pedagogical, maybe that's too much of a top tip.
But no, I think that's right. I think really what you're saying is make sure the foundations are there, because as you say, relationships are so key. I think for me, that's one of the biggest things that I learned was that communication with people. And I would say the IT guy is my best friend, because if you say, yes, let's do something, and it all falls down, people lose trust in what you're trying to achieve. And even if you had all good intentions, that's obviously not the kind of relationship we want to do. Is better to be measured, I guess, is what you're saying, and say, let's check, and then we'll move forwards, because then it can be successful. But as you say, there are so many different stakeholders involved within the journey of EdTech, right?
That's it,
Thank you so much, Sidney, for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you and to meet you and your students a couple of weeks ago. So thank you so much for your time. I'm sure we'll speak again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippa. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow, rate and share the EdTech podcast wherever you're listening. It really helps us grow and reach more educators and innovators around the world. We'd also love to hear from you, your thoughts, questions, or even your own stories of change in education. You can leave us a voice note on SpeakPipe. The link is in the show notes. And we might even feature your message in an upcoming episode. And of course, you can find all our links and show notes and resources at theedtechpodcast.com.